Picture this. High atop the mesas of northeastern Arizona, where the earth touches the sky and silence speaks louder than words, there exists a people who have guarded humanity's most important secrets for over 1,000 years. They are not conquerors. They are not empire builders. They are something far more powerful. They are rememberers, the Hopi. Their very name means the peaceful people, but their knowledge is anything but passive. For generations stretching back into the mists of time, they have carried prophecies, warnings, etched not in stone tablets or ancient scrolls, but woven into the living fabric of their daily existence. Prophecies about the world we live in right now, about the choices we're making, about what comes next. And here's what should make you sit up and pay attention. These aren't vague, mystical predictions. The Hopi foretold specific events, specific inventions, specific moments in human history with an accuracy that defies explanation. They spoke of cobwebs in the sky long before power lines crisscrossed continents. They described roads of stone where no natural paths existed. They warned of ashes falling from the sky that would burn the land and boil the oceans, generations before the atomic age. But this isn't just a story about prediction. It's about understanding. The Hopi don't just tell us what will happen. They tell us why. They reveal the invisible threads that connect human behavior to planetary consequence, spiritual imbalance to physical catastrophe, forgetting to falling. Over the next 90 minutes, you're going to journey into one of the most sophisticated spiritual cosmologies ever developed by human civilization. We're going to explore emergence myths that explain not just where we came from, but why we're here. We'll decode prophecies that read like tomorrow's headlines. We'll meet the Kachinas, beings that bridge the visible and invisible worlds. And we'll discover a message so urgent, so profoundly relevant to our current moment, that ignoring it might be the most dangerous choice humanity ever makes. This is not entertainment. This is remembering. Because the Hopi have always known something that modern civilization is only now, perhaps too late, beginning to understand. That time is not linear. That what we call the future has already sent its warnings back to us. That somewhere in the Arizona desert, guardians have been keeping watch, waiting for the moment when humanity would be ready to listen. That moment is now. Let's begin. To understand the Hopi, you must first understand that they do not see time the way we do. For them, history is not a straight line marching from primitive past to advanced future. History is a spiral, a cycle, a series of worlds, each one rising from the ashes of the last, each one carrying the lessons and failures of what came before. According to Hopi tradition, we are currently living in the fourth world. Not the first, not the second or third, the fourth. And each of the previous three worlds ended in catastrophe, destroyed not by random chance or natural disaster, but by human forgetfulness. By the moment when people stopped remembering who they were, where they came from, and what they were supposed to do. Let's go back to the beginning. The first world. The Hopi call it Tokpela, the endless space. In this world, there was no death, no suffering, no separation. Human beings lived in harmony with Tayoa, the creator, and Sotuknang, the maker of forms. They communicated telepathically. They lived in balance with all creatures. They understood that the earth was not a resource to be exploited, but a living being to be honored. But over time, something shifted. Some people began to forget. They became fascinated with their own cleverness, their own creations, their own power. They started to believe they were separate from the web of life, above it somehow. They stopped listening to the quiet voice of the Creator and started listening only to their own desires. And so the first world was destroyed, not as punishment, but as consequence. Because when human beings forget their connection to the sacred, when they prioritize exploitation over relationship, the very foundations of reality become unstable. But here's where the Hopi story becomes remarkable. Before the destruction came, Sotuknang appeared to those who had remained faithful, those who still remembered. He led them to safety, guiding them through the hollow interior of the earth to emerge into the second world. The second world, Tokpa, was different. It was denser, more physical. Animals and humans could no longer speak the same language. Distance had entered creation. But still, there was beauty. Still, there was potential. The people who emerged brought with them the stories, the warnings, the knowledge of what had been lost. For a time, they remembered. They built villages. They planted corn. They honored the cycles. But again, slowly, imperceptibly, forgetting crept in. People became obsessed with accumulation, with ownership, with drawing boundaries around what had once been shared. They created systems of trade that valued objects over relationships. They began to hoard and compete and separate into factions. The second world ended in ice, a great freezing that locked the land in winter, that stopped the cycles, that made growth impossible. Again, the faithful were warned. Again, they were led to safety. Again, they descended into the earth and emerged into a new world. The third world, Kuskurza, was even denser still. This world saw the rise of great civilizations, advanced technologies, flying machines that soared through the air. The Hopi speak of cities that stretched to the horizon, of inventions that could level mountains and redirect rivers. This was a world of unprecedented power. And it corrupted absolutely. Nations went to war. Weapons of unimaginable destruction were created. The very elements were bent to human will without thought for consequence. People became so enamored with their ability to manipulate matter that they forgot matter itself was sacred. The third world ended in flood. Great waters rose and swallowed the continents, washing away the cities, the weapons, the pride. But the pattern held. Before the waters came, the faithful gathered. They were led by Sotuknang to hollow reeds, to boats, to high mountains. And when the waters receded, they emerged into the fourth world. Our world. The world we inhabit right now. Now, here's what makes this fourth world different, and this is critical. When the people emerged into this world, they were given explicit instructions. They were told that this world would be harder than the others, that survival would require work, discipline, remembering. They were divided into clans and sent in the 4 sacred directions to migrate across the land, to leave their footprints, to mark the boundaries of the spiritual homeland. These migrations were not random wanderings. They were intentional acts of consecration. Each clan carried sacred knowledge, sacred responsibilities. The Bear Clan, the Snake Clan, the Butterfly Clan, each one a keeper of specific wisdom, specific ceremonies, specific relationships with the forces of nature. After generations of migration, covering thousands of miles, encountering countless hardships, the clans were called back to the center, to the place where they would make their final stand, to the mesas of what is now northeastern Arizona, and there, they were told something that echoes through the centuries to this moment. They were told that the fourth world would last only as long as the people remembered, only as long as they performed the ceremonies, only as long as they maintained balance, only as long as they refused to forget. Because the Hopi understand something that modern civilization has lost. They understand that reality itself is held in place by consciousness, by attention, by the daily act of remembering. That the sun doesn't rise because of physics alone, but because people welcome it with prayer. That rain doesn't fall because of meteorology alone, but because ceremonies create the conditions for blessing. That the earth doesn't produce food because of agriculture alone, but because humans maintain their sacred contract with the soil. This sounds like superstition to modern ears. But consider this. The Hopi have lived in one of the harshest environments on the North American continent for over 1,000 years. No rivers, minimal rainfall, extreme temperatures, thin soil. And yet, they have not just survived, they have thrived, growing corn, beans, and squash in conditions that would make modern agricultural scientists weep. How? because they understand that farming is not mechanics. It's relationship. It's prayer made physical. It's the daily renewal of an ancient contract between human beings and the living earth. The fourth world is defined by this remembering, but it's also defined by a timeline. The Hopi were told that this world would pass through specific stages, marked by specific signs, that there would come a moment, a choice point, when humanity would have to decide to remember or to forget, to return to balance or to continue the spiral into destruction. And here's the prophecy that should make your blood run cold. They were told that if humanity failed to remember, if the sacred ways were abandoned, if exploitation became the dominant relationship with the earth, then the fourth world would end just like the others, in catastrophe, in cleansing, in a great purification. But unlike the previous worlds, there was a caveat, a warning wrapped inside a promise. They were told that this time, there might not be a fifth world, that this might be humanity's last chance, that the choices made in the fourth world would determine whether conscious life continues on this planet or whether the human experiment ends. The Hopi call the critical period the end times, but that's a mistranslation. It's not about endings, it's about choosing, about the moment when humanity collectively decides whether to wake up or to continue sleeping, whether to remember or to forget, whether to live as sacred beings embedded in a living cosmos or as isolated consumers devouring a dead planet. We are living in that moment right now. The signs the Hopi were told to watch for? They've all appeared. The cobwebs in the sky, power lines and internet cables, the rivers of stone, highways cutting across sacred land, the houses in the sky, airplanes, the gourd of ashes that boils the oceans, the atomic bomb. Every single marker has manifested, which means we are at the choice point, the moment when the fourth world either transforms or ends. And the Hopi have been preparing for this moment for 1,000 years, keeping the ceremonies alive, keeping the stories intact, keeping the memory burning like a small flame in the vast darkness of forgetting. Their emergence myths are not ancient superstitions. They are sophisticated models of cyclical time, of consciousness evolution, of the intimate relationship between human behavior and planetary health. They tell us that we've been here before, that humanity has risen and fallen not once but 3 times. That power without wisdom leads inevitably to catastrophe. That technology without spirituality becomes a weapon turned against its creators. The fourth world is our world, and its fate is not predetermined. It hangs in the balance, waiting for humanity to remember what the Hopi have never forgotten: that we are not separate from nature, that the earth is not a resource, that ceremony is not superstition, but the technology that keeps reality coherent. That prophecy is not prediction, but pattern recognition across cycles of time. And now, having established where we are and how we got here, we need to dive deeper into what the Hopi actually saw coming, into the prophecies themselves, into the specific warnings, the specific markers, the specific choices that would determine whether the fourth world becomes a fifth or ends in fire. Because this is where ancient wisdom meets modern crisis, where 1,000-year-old prophecies describe our world with terrifying precision. There's a rock. It sits near the village of Oribe, one of the oldest continuously inhabited settlements in North America. Carved into its surface is an image that has puzzled anthropologists, fascinated seekers, and haunted those who understand its meaning. The Hopi call it the Prophecy Rock. At first glance, it's simple. 2 paths. One path continues straight, connected to the land, to the corn, to the cycles. The other path rises upward, separated from the earth, technological, ascending. Between them, a figure stands at a crossroads, choosing. And at the end? The upper path terminates abruptly, fragmenting into chaos. The lower path continues, connected to the life force, spiraling forward. This is not metaphor. This is blueprint. This is a map of the exact moment in history we're living through right now. The choice between two fundamentally different ways of being human. The Hopi prophets, speaking across generations, described a series of events, signs, and inventions that would mark the progression of the Fourth World toward its crisis point. And here's what's remarkable. They weren't vague. They didn't speak in riddles. They gave specific, concrete descriptions of things that didn't exist in their world, but would emerge in ours. The first signs were gentle. The coming of the white man, the bearded visitors from across the great water, the introduction of horses, cattle, new crops. These were seen not as inherently good or bad, but as markers, as indicators that the timeline was moving forward, that the prophesied transformation was beginning. Then the signs became more ominous. The Hopi spoke of the arrival of the iron snake, winding across the land, belching smoke and noise. The railroad. When the first trains crossed Hopi land in the late 19th century, the elders knew. A marker had been reached. Time was accelerating. They spoke of the land being crisscrossed by spider webs. When telephone lines, and later power lines, began stretching across the Arizona desert, another prophecy fulfilled. Another step closer to the choice point. They described horseless carriages moving on black ribbons, cars on asphalt highways. Check. They warned of houses that move, homes on wheels, recreational vehicles, mobile homes, the entire culture of American mobility. Check. They foretold of the ocean turning black and dying, oil spills, chemical pollution, dead zones expanding in the world's oceans. Check. They spoke of the Earth's protective shield being damaged, allowing harmful light to penetrate. The ozone layer, CFCs, increased UV radiation. Check. They warned that young people would wear their hair long like the Hopi, but would be lost and without direction. The counterculture movement, the 60s and 70s, young people rebelling against the dominant culture, but often without connection to authentic indigenous wisdom. Check. They said that man would create a gourd of ashes that, if dropped, would boil the oceans and burn the land, making it infertile for generations. On August 6, 1945, the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, the most devastating and precise fulfillment of Hopi prophecy. The gourd of ashes had manifested, but perhaps the most chilling prophecy of all concerned the moment when humanity would build a house in the sky where people from all nations would gather. In 1945, the United Nations was established. In the Hopi language, they call it the House of Mika, because the original UN building in New York had a facade that sparkled like the mineral mica. The Hopi elders knew that when this house was built, they would be called to speak there, that they would be given 3 chances to deliver their message to the world, that if the message was received, humanity might choose the lower path, the path of balance. But if rejected, the upper path would continue to its inevitable conclusion. In 1948, a Hopi elder attempted to address the UN but was turned away. The first chance, missed. In 1976, during the International NGO Conference on Indigenous Peoples, Hopi representatives spoke. Some listened. Most dismissed it as quaint folklore. The second chance, partially realized but largely ignored. In 1992, at the Earth Summit in Rio, Hopi elders again brought their message. By then, the environmental movement had given them a slightly larger platform, but the fundamental message was still treated as spiritual poetry rather than urgent warning. The third chance, offered but not fully received. According to prophecy, after the third rejection, events would accelerate rapidly. Natural disasters would increase. Social cohesion would fragment. The symptoms of imbalance would become impossible to ignore. Look around. Hurricanes of unprecedented intensity, wildfires that burn year-round, droughts that empty aquifers and rivers, floods that submerge entire regions, species disappearing at rates unseen since the last mass extinction, and perhaps most telling, the complete breakdown of shared reality, where people can no longer agree on basic facts, where society fragments into warring tribes of belief. The Hopi prophets saw all of this, but they didn't see it as punishment from an angry God. They saw it as consequence, as the natural result of breaking balance, as what happens when humanity severs its relationship with the sacred and treats the earth as a warehouse of resources to be extracted. And this brings us to the heart of Hopi wisdom, the teaching that explains everything. The sacred corn cycle. Corn is not just a crop to the Hopi. It's a teacher. It's a mirror. It's a physical manifestation of spiritual law. And understanding the corn cycle is understanding the entire Hopi worldview. The Hopi grow corn in one of the most unlikely places on Earth. Their traditional fields receive maybe 10 inches of rain a year. The soil is sandy, thin, mineral poor. The growing season is short, bracketed by late frosts and early freezes. By every measure of modern agriculture, it shouldn't work. But Hopi corn doesn't follow the rules of modern agriculture. Hopi corn has roots that reach 10, 12, sometimes 15 feet deep into the earth. Because it's not engineered for maximum yield. It's adapted for relationship. It's bred over thousands of years to survive not by overwhelming the environment, but by partnering with it, by finding the deep water, by developing the resilience to weather extremes. The Hopi plant corn in a sacred manner. They don't just scatter seed and hope for the best. They prepare, they pray, they fast. They enter into relationship with the corn spirit, asking permission, offering blessing, promising care and reciprocity. Each seed is planted with intention. 12 to 15 seeds in a deep hole, clustered together so they can support each other, so the roots can intertwine, so they can share water and nutrients and strength. This is not inefficiency. This is wisdom. This is understanding that survival requires community, that isolation is death, that strength comes from connection. The corn is blue, white, red, yellow, and multicolored, each color corresponding to a sacred direction, a specific medicine, a particular teaching. This diversity is not accidental. It's insurance against catastrophe. If one variety fails, others will succeed. Because balance requires diversity. Monoculture, whether in agriculture or culture, is inherently unstable. The corn cycle follows the spiritual calendar. Planting happens when specific stars appear, when particular ceremonies are completed, when the land gives permission. Growing season is protected by ritual, by songs that call the rain, by prayers that strengthen the stalks. Harvest is sacred, approached with gratitude and ceremony. And after harvest, the corn is stored, shared, used in ceremonies, transformed into pollen for blessing. But here's the deeper teaching. The corn doesn't just feed the body, it feeds the spirit. Corn pollen is used in every major Hopi ceremony. It marks prayers, it blesses participants, it creates sacred boundaries. The corn is woven into ritual life so completely that without it, the ceremonies cannot function. Without the ceremonies, the people forget. Without the people remembering, the world falls out of balance. See the connection? The corn is not separate from prophecy. The corn is the physical manifestation of whether balance is being maintained. When the corn grows, when the ceremonies are performed, when the people remember, the world remains stable. When the corn fails, when ceremonies are abandoned, when people forget, catastrophe approaches. And here's what the Hopi have been trying to tell us. Modern civilization is built on the opposite principle. Industrial agriculture is the antithesis of the sacred corn cycle. Monoculture instead of diversity. Shallow roots instead of deep. Chemical dependency instead of relationship. Maximum extraction instead of reciprocity. Genetic engineering instead of patient selection over generations. Terminator seeds that cannot reproduce instead of seeds that carry memory forward. This isn't just different farming techniques. This is two fundamentally opposed philosophies of existence. One sees the earth as alive, sentient, sacred, requiring relationship and reciprocity. The other sees the earth as dead matter, resources to be extracted, maximized, controlled. One leads to sustainability, resilience, continuity. The other leads to depletion, fragility, collapse. And we are watching, in real time, which philosophy produces which outcome. The Hopi have corn varieties that are over 3,000 years old. Genetic lines maintained without interruption through countless droughts, floods, frosts, and catastrophes. Because the corn is not just food, it's memory, it's prophecy. It's the physical proof that balance works, that relationship sustains, that what honors the sacred endures. Modern agriculture has existed for maybe 150 years in its current industrial form, and already it's failing. Topsoil eroding at catastrophic rates, aquifers draining faster than they can recharge, pesticides killing pollinators, herbicides creating resistant superweeds, fertilizers creating dead zones in rivers and oceans. The very system that was supposed to feed the world is poisoning the foundation of all food production. The prophecy said that when humanity prioritizes short-term gain over long-term balance, when extraction replaces reciprocity, when the sacred is treated as resource, the earth herself will respond. Not with anger, but with consequence. The land will become barren. The water will become scarce. The weather will become extreme. And humanity will face a choice. Return to balance or face the same fate as the third world. The corn cycle teaches that this choice is made daily. Every time a seed is planted with prayer or planted with poison. Every time food is received with gratitude or consumed mindlessly. Every time the earth is honored as alive or treated as dead. These are not small, personal, insignificant choices. These are the choices that determine whether the fourth world continues or ends. Balance is not a static state. It's a daily practice. It's a ceremony performed in every action. It's remembering, enacted. And the sacred corn cycle is the template, the model, the teaching made visible. The Hopi know that humanity has reached the point in the cycle where the choice must be made consciously, collectively, where business as usual leads directly to catastrophe, where pretending everything is fine guarantees everything ends, where the only path forward is the path back to balance, back to relationship, back to treating the earth not as resource, but as relative. This is not romanticism. This is the most pragmatic, hard-headed assessment of our situation possible. Because the data supports the prophecy. Climate science, ecology, systems theory, all of it points to the same conclusion the Hopi reached 1,000 years ago. That we are embedded in living systems. That those systems have limits. That exceeding those limits creates cascading consequences. That the time to change course is not someday, it's right now. The corn still grows on the Hopi mesas. The ceremonies are still performed. The prayers are still offered. Not because the Hopi are trapped in the past, but because they understand that these practices are the bridge to the future. That what sustained them through 3 world endings might just be what sustains humanity through the 4th. And now, we need to go deeper still. Because the Hopi don't maintain balance alone. They have help. They have allies. They have relationships with beings that exist between the worlds, that carry messages from the sacred realm into the physical. They have the Kachinas. And understanding the Kachinas is understanding how the Hopi maintain their connection to the invisible forces that animate reality itself. If you were standing on the edge of one of the Hopi mesas at dawn, looking out over the painted desert as the sun breaks over the horizon, you might see something that would fundamentally challenge your understanding of reality. You might see figures approaching. Figures dressed in elaborate costumes, wearing carved wooden masks, carrying rattles and yucca whips, moving with a deliberate, rhythmic purpose. And if you asked a Hopi elder who these figures are, they would tell you something that sounds impossible to modern ears. They would tell you that these are not people wearing costumes. These are the Kachinas. These are the spirits themselves, manifest in physical form. This is where we have to slow down. Because the Kachinas are perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of Hopi spirituality. Western anthropologists have called them gods, dolls, ancestors, nature spirits, even aliens. But none of these categories capture what the Kachinas actually are, because the Kachinas exist in a space that Western thinking struggles to comprehend. A space between the material and the immaterial, between the human and the divine, between the visible and invisible. The Kachinas are teachers. They are messengers. They are the physical manifestation of natural forces, cosmic principles, and ancestral wisdom. They are, in the most literal sense, spirits that inhabit human form during specific ceremonial periods to deliver teachings, to maintain balance, to connect the Hopi people with the forces that animate the universe. According to Hopi tradition, there are hundreds of different Kachinas. Each one represents a specific aspect of the natural or spiritual world. There are corn Kachinas, rain Kachinas, sun Kachinas, animal Kachinas. There are Kachinas that represent virtues like patience and discipline. There are Kachinas that embody the forces of growth, decay, transformation. There are even clown Kachinas that teach through humor and disruption. But here's what makes the Kachina traditions so sophisticated. The Kachinas are not worshipped. They are not prayed to in the way deities are prayed to in other traditions. Instead, they are partners, collaborators, relatives. The relationship between the Hopi and the Kachinas is reciprocal. The Hopi perform ceremonies, maintain the sacred cycle, live in balance. In return, the Kachinas bring rain, bless the crops, teach the children, maintain the connection between the physical world and the spiritual realm. This reciprocity is crucial. The Kachinas are not all-powerful. They need the Hopi as much as the Hopi need them. Because consciousness, in the Hopi worldview, is a collaborative project. The spirits cannot maintain balance without human participation, and humans cannot maintain connection without spiritual guidance. It's a web of mutual responsibility, mutual sustenance, mutual transformation. The Kachina calendar follows the agricultural and ceremonial year with precise coordination. It begins in the winter solstice, during the soil ceremony, when the sun reaches its southernmost point and must be turned back north to ensure that spring will come. This is when the Kachinas return from their home in the San Francisco Peaks, the sacred mountains visible from the Hopi mesas. For the next 6 months, from winter solstice to summer solstice, the Kachinas are present in the villages. They perform ceremonies, they dance in the plazas, they visit homes, they discipline unruly children, they bless the corn, they pray for rain, they maintain the delicate balance between human need and natural limit. Then, at the summer solstice, during the Nieman ceremony, the home dance, the Kachinas return to the peaks. They don't disappear. They don't cease to exist. They simply return to the spiritual realm, to the invisible dimension that underlies and penetrates physical reality. And for the next 6 months, the Hopi must maintain balance without direct Kachina presence, relying on the teachings received, the disciplines learned, the relationship cultivated during the Kachina season. This calendar is not arbitrary. It's aligned with the sun, the stars, the seasons, the agricultural cycle. It's a system of timekeeping that connects cosmic movement with earthly need, that synchronizes human activity with natural rhythm, that ensures attention is paid at the precise moments when attention is most necessary. Let's go deeper into specific Kachinas to understand how this system actually works. Consider Angwisnasamtaka, the Crow Mother. She appears early in the Kachina season, often during the Pawamu ceremony in February. She is the mother of all Kachinas, the one who oversees their arrival, who ensures they come with proper intention and sacred purpose. She carries a basket of seeds, representing the potential of the coming growing season. She visits homes, blesses children, distributes gifts that are not mere toys but teaching tools, objects that carry encoded knowledge. The Crow Mother doesn't speak. Her teaching is silent, transmitted through presence, through symbol, through the weight of attention she brings into a space. Children who receive her blessing learn that the spiritual world is not distant or abstract. It's here. It's tangible. It's looking at you through painted eyes, expecting you to remember, to grow, to maintain the sacred way. Or consider the Masau'u, the guardian of the fourth world itself. Masau'u is not a Kachina in the traditional sense. He's something older, something more fundamental. He's the deity who granted the Hopi permission to inhabit these lands, who set the conditions for their stewardship, who reminds them constantly that they are not owners but caretakers, not conquerors but guests. Masau appears as a figure of death and earth, skeleton-faced, covered in blood, representing the cycle of decay that makes new growth possible. He's terrifying and necessary, a reminder that death is not the opposite of life, but its partner, its prerequisite, its transformation. When the Hopi see Masau in ceremony, they are confronting the reality that the fourth world is mortal, that it can die, that their responsibility is to maintain it for as long as possible through right relationship and constant remembering. Then there are the rain Kachinas, perhaps the most vital in the desert environment. Kachinas like Pakavi, the frog Kachina, or Angwusi, the crow Kachina with moisture-bringing power. These Kachinas don't make rain appear magically. They don't override meteorology with supernatural intervention. Instead, they align human consciousness with the patterns that produce rain, that call moisture from the sky, that create the conditions for blessing. The rain dances are hypnotic, rhythmic, performed in the open plazas under the blazing sun or the gathering clouds. The Kachinas move in unison, rattles creating a sound like falling rain, feet pounding the earth in rhythms that echo thunder. And the people watch, participate, add their consciousness to the ceremony, their belief to the intention, their need to the prayer. Does it work? Ask the Hopi, who have lived in a region that receives 10 inches of rain per year for over a millennium, growing corn that requires 12 inches minimum. Ask them how they've survived. They'll tell you the ceremonies work, not because spirits override physics, but because consciousness, when properly aligned and collectively focused, participates in the patterns that physics describes, that the boundary between mind and matter is more porous than materialism admits. That prayer is a form of information exchange with systems more intelligent than the individual human mind. This might sound like superstition until you consider the mounting scientific evidence that consciousness does affect physical systems. Quantum mechanics hints at it. Studies on intention and healing suggest it. The Global Consciousness Project documented it. Indigenous peoples have known it for thousands of years. That consciousness is not a byproduct of matter, but a fundamental feature of reality, and that therefore, intentional, ceremonial, collective focusing of consciousness can absolutely influence outcomes. The Kachinas are the technology by which the Hopi maintain this influence. They are interfaces between human consciousness and the larger patterns of nature and cosmos. They are the form that makes formless forces comprehensible, accessible, workable. And the mesas themselves are part of this technology. The Hopi didn't choose the mesa locations arbitrarily. These are power spots, places where the Earth's energy is concentrated, where the veil between worlds is thin, where ceremony has maximum effect. First mesa, second mesa, third mesa, each one a different energy, a different emphasis, a different teaching. The villages perched on these mesas, Walpi, Shongopovi, Oraibi, Hodavilla, are not just human settlements. They are ceremonial centers, positioned with the same precision that medieval cathedrals were positioned on ley lines, that Egyptian pyramids were aligned with stars. The Hopi mesas are energy architecture, designed to facilitate the exchange between human and spirit, earth and sky, visible and invisible. Living on the mesas requires discipline. Water must be carried up from springs below. Every resource must be hauled up steep trails. Life is hard by modern standards. But this hardship is not accidental. It's pedagogical. It ensures that people remain humble, remain connected to the earth, remain aware of limitation and necessity. It prevents the kind of easy abundance that breeds forgetting, that allows people to believe they are self-sufficient. that permits the illusion of separation from nature. The spiritual calendar that governs Kachina appearances also governs all of Hopi life. The year is divided into ceremonial periods, each one focused on specific spiritual work, specific teachings, specific relationships with natural forces. Winter solstice, Soyal, turning the sun. Spring, Pawamu, the bean planting ceremony, preparing for the growing season. Summer, the Kachina dances, calling rain. Summer solstice, Niman, releasing the Kachinas back to the peaks. Late summer and fall, the snake dance, the flute dance, ceremonies that thank the earth, that prepare for harvest, that maintain balance as the year turns toward completion. Each ceremony is not a performance. It's not theater. It's work. Spiritual work that maintains the fabric of reality, that keeps the fourth world stable, that prevents the kind of imbalance that destroyed the previous three worlds. The participants fast, pray, retreat into kivas for days of preparation. They emerge transformed, carrying the weight of responsibility, the knowledge that what they do in ceremony reverberates through the entire web of existence. The kivas themselves are architectural representations of emergence theology. These underground ceremonial chambers are accessed through a ladder that descends through an opening in the roof. The ladder represents the reed through which the Hopi emerged from the third world into the fourth. The opening represents the sipapu, the place of emergence, the birth canal between worlds. Inside the kiva, everything is symbolic, intentional, loaded with meaning. The floor represents the earth. The walls represent the four sacred directions. The small hole in the floor, the actual sipapu, represents the connection to previous worlds, to ancestors, to the source. The ladder ascending to the roof opening represents the path to the upper world, to sky consciousness, to cosmic awareness. When men descend into the kiva for ceremony, they are not just going underground. They are symbolically returning to the womb of emergence, reconnecting with the source, preparing to be reborn with renewed commitment to the sacred way. They are practicing, in physical form, the death and rebirth that all transformation requires. And in these kivas, masked Kachina dancers prepare. The mask is not a costume. The moment the mask is placed over the face, the individual human identity recedes, and the Kachina spirit enters. The dancer is no longer John or Thomas or Michael. He is the crow mother, the rain bringer, the corn spirit. His consciousness shifts. His movements change. His very presence becomes something other, something more, something that carries the accumulated power of thousands of years of ceremonial repetition. This is possession, but not in the horror movie sense. It's conscious, willing, trained possession. It's the practiced ability to temporarily set aside individual ego and become a vessel for transpersonal forces. It's a technology of consciousness that most modern people have lost access to, but that remains crucial for maintaining connection between human and sacred. The children watch these ceremonies with wide eyes, absorbing teachings that cannot be put into words. They learn that the world is alive, that spirits are real, that the natural and supernatural are not separate realms, but interpenetrating dimensions of a unified reality. They learn that their behavior matters cosmically, that how they treat the earth, each other, and themselves has consequences that ripple through visible and invisible worlds. And they receive Kachina dolls, called titu. But these are not toys in the Western sense. They are teaching tools, three-dimensional textbooks. Each doll represents a specific Kachina, carved with precise detail, painted with traditional pigments, dressed in miniature versions of ceremonial regalia. The child studies the doll, learns to recognize the Kachina, understands its teachings, memorizes its role in the ceremonial calendar. The carving of taithu is itself a sacred practice. The wood comes from cottonwood roots, gathered with prayer. The carving is meditative, intentional, each cut an act of devotion. The painting follows traditional patterns that have been maintained for generations. The feathers, shells, and cloth used in decoration are gathered with care and gratitude. A master carver is not an artist in the modern sense. He's a transmitter, ensuring that the visual language of Kachina knowledge passes intact to the next generation. But here's what's crucial to understand. The Kachina tradition is not frozen in time. It's not a museum piece preserved under glass. It's alive. It evolves. New Kachinas appear when needed. When Europeans arrived, new Kachinas emerged to teach about this change, to help the Hopi understand and navigate these strange visitors. When modern technology appeared, Kachinas adapted their teachings to address new challenges. This adaptability is the key to the system's survival. The Hopi don't reject change. They integrate it, understand it, place it within the framework of balance and remembering. The question is never whether something is new or old. The question is whether it maintains balance or disrupts it, whether it honors the sacred or treats the world as disposable, whether it supports the continuation of the fourth world or accelerates its destruction. And this brings us to the most important teaching of the Kachina tradition: that the boundary between human and spirit, between matter and consciousness, between the visible and invisible, is not a wall. It's a membrane. It's permeable. It's crossed constantly by those who know how to navigate it. The Kachinas prove that the materialist worldview, the view that consciousness is an accident of complex chemistry, that the physical world is all that exists, that spirits and gods are primitive superstitions, this view is not just wrong, it's dangerously incomplete. Because when you lose connection to the invisible dimensions of reality, when you stop believing in the presence and participation of non-human consciousness, you lose access to the very tools you need to maintain balance, to navigate crisis, to ensure continuity. The Hopi have survived as a coherent culture for over 1,000 years, in a landscape that should be uninhabitable, surrounded by civilizations that have tried to destroy them, facing pressures that have annihilated countless other indigenous peoples. They've survived because the Kachinas kept coming, because the ceremonies continued, because the connection between worlds was maintained, generation after generation, crisis after crisis, world after world. And that connection is what the modern world needs most urgently right now. Not the specific forms of Hopi ceremony, which belong to the Hopi and cannot simply be appropriated, but the principle underneath. The understanding that we are not alone in the universe, that consciousness exists at scales and in forms beyond human, that the earth itself is intelligent, sentient, responsive, that spirits, however we name them, are real partners in the project of maintaining a living world. This isn't asking you to believe in something without evidence. This is asking you to pay attention to the evidence that doesn't fit materialist assumptions. The evidence that indigenous peoples around the world have maintained sustainable relationships with their environments for thousands of years, precisely because they never stopped talking to the land, the water, the sky, never stopped listening for responses, never stopped treating the natural world as a community of subjects rather than a collection of objects. The Kachina dances continue on the Hopi mesas. The masks are still carved. The ceremonies are still performed, not as tourist attractions, not as quaint cultural preservation, but as the essential work that keeps the world in balance. The Hopi know that every time the Kachinas dance, every time the prayers are offered, every time corn pollen is scattered to the directions, they are holding up their end of an ancient contract. They are maintaining the connection. They are doing their part to ensure the fourth world doesn't meet the same fate as the first three. But they also know they can't do it alone, that the crisis is too large, too pervasive, too systemic, that for the fourth world to continue, humanity as a whole must wake up, must remember, must return to relationship with the sacred. And this is why the Hopi have been trying to share their message with the wider world, why they have spoken at the UN, written books, allowed certain teachings to become public. Not because they've abandoned their traditional secrecy, but because the moment is too urgent for silence. The Kachinas carry a message for all of us, And that message is simple, direct, non-negotiable. Remember who you are. Remember where you came from. Remember that you are not separate from the web of life, but woven into it. Remember that the earth is your mother, the sky is your father, and all beings are your relatives. Remember that what you do to the world, you do to yourself. Remember, or face the consequences that forgetting inevitably brings. This is the teaching of the Kachinas. This is the wisdom of the mesas. This is the gift of the spiritual calendar. And now, having walked through emergence, prophecy, and the spirit world, we need to arrive at the question that matters most. What do the Hopi want us to do with this knowledge? What is their message for the modern world? What are they asking of us in this moment of unprecedented crisis? Because the Hopi didn't preserve this wisdom for 1,000 years just to watch civilization collapse. They preserved it because they knew this moment was coming, and they have something to say about it. In 1948, an elderly Hopi named Dan Kachongva held a tablet in his hands. Not metaphorically. An actual stone tablet, carved by ancestors generations past, inscribed with symbols that encoded the most important prophecy the Hopi had ever received. He was preparing to travel to the newly formed United Nations, believing that the moment foretold by prophecy had arrived. The moment when the Hopi would be called to speak to the leaders of the world, to deliver a message that could determine the fate of the Fourth World. He was turned away at the door. Security didn't understand. Bureaucrats didn't care. An old Native American with a stone tablet wasn't on the schedule, wasn't part of the program, wasn't recognized as relevant to the serious business of international diplomacy. But Dan Kachongva didn't give up, because he knew something that the suited diplomats inside that building didn't know. That the stone tablet he carried contained information more critical to human survival than any treaty, any trade agreement, any military alliance being discussed in those chambers. It contained the map to navigate the crisis that was coming, the crisis we're living through right now. So he waited. And other Hopi elders came after him, generation after generation, trying to deliver the message, trying to make the world understand. And slowly, painfully, a few people began to listen. Environmental activists, spiritual seekers, scientists studying indigenous knowledge systems, people who understood that the dominant culture was driving civilization off a cliff, and that maybe, just maybe, people who had sustained themselves for thousands of years had something to teach us about sustainability. The Hopi message for the modern world is not comfortable. It's not reassuring. It doesn't offer easy fixes or technological salvation. It demands something far more difficult than building better solar panels or passing stricter regulations. It demands transformation, a fundamental shift in consciousness, in worldview, in the very way we understand our relationship with reality. Let me break down the core components of this message, because this is the heart of everything. This is what 1,000 years of prophecy and ceremony and survival has been building toward. First, recognize that we are at the crossroads. The choice point the prophecy rock depicts is not some future possibility. It's here. It's now. Every day we delay is a day further down the path that terminates in catastrophe. The signs have all appeared. The warnings have all been given. The moment of pretending everything will be fine has passed. We are living in the end times not as apocalyptic fantasy, but as observable reality. Climate chaos, mass extinction, social fragmentation. These are not temporary problems awaiting technical solutions. They are symptoms of fundamental imbalance, and without addressing the root cause, no amount of technical innovation will prevent collapse. The root cause, according to Hopi teaching, is spiritual. It's the belief that human beings are separate from nature, that we are masters rather than participants, that we have the right to extract without limit, to modify without consequence, to treat the living earth as dead matter. This belief is killing us, not slowly, not eventually, but right now. And until we abandon this belief, until we return to an understanding of ourselves as embedded in a living cosmos, Every solution we attempt will be partial, temporary, ultimately inadequate. Second, understand that balance is not optional. The Hopi concept of balance goes far beyond environmental protection or sustainable development. Balance means recognizing that every action has consequences, that taking requires giving, that use requires gratitude, that power requires responsibility. Balance means understanding that the material and spiritual are not separate realms but aspects of a unified reality, and that neglecting the spiritual dimension guarantees material catastrophe. Modern civilization operates on the principle of imbalance. Take more than you give, consume more than you need, prioritize individual gain over collective well-being, extract resources faster than they can regenerate. These are not strategies for success. They are guarantees of failure. And the Hopi know this because they've seen it before, in the previous 3 worlds. They know that civilizations built on imbalance always collapse, always destroy themselves, always create the conditions for their own termination. But they also know that balance can be restored. Not easily, not without sacrifice, but it can be done. It requires discipline, ceremony, constant attention, daily choice. It requires treating every meal as a sacred gift, every resource as a relative, every decision as a ceremonial act. It requires slowing down, simplifying, releasing the addiction to endless growth and consumption. It requires, in short, becoming indigenous again, not to a specific place necessarily, but to the earth itself. To the understanding that this planet is home, mother, source, and that its health is our health, its survival our survival. Third, remember the sacred. This is perhaps the hardest message for modern secular consciousness to receive, because we have been trained, conditioned, indoctrinated to believe that the sacred is superstition, that spirits are primitive imagination, that ceremony is empty ritual. We have been taught that only matter is real, only what can be measured exists, only what can be controlled has value. And this teaching is the most destructive lie ever told. Because when nothing is sacred, everything becomes expendable. When the earth is not your mother but just geology and chemistry, why not mine her bones and drain her blood? When animals are not relatives but just biological machines, why not factory farm them by the billions? When water is not the life-giving blood of the world but just H2O, why not poison it with chemicals and waste? The sacred is not a belief, it's a relationship. It's the recognition that existence itself is a gift, that consciousness is a mystery, that life is a miracle that cannot be explained away by reductionist science. To remember the sacred is to restore awe, gratitude, humility. It's to understand that we are not the pinnacle of evolution, but recent participants in a web of intelligence that vastly exceeds our comprehension. The Hopi maintain the sacred through ceremony, through daily practice, through treating ordinary activities like planting corn or gathering water as holy acts. They don't separate sacred from secular, Sunday from weekday, church from home. Every moment is potential ceremony. Every action is potential prayer. Every breath is potential communion with the sacred. And this is what they're asking of us. Not to adopt Hopi ceremonies, which are not ours to take, but to find our own ways of restoring the sacred to daily life. To create our own ceremonies, our own rituals, our own practices that reconnect us with the source. To treat eating as sacred, work as sacred, relationship as sacred. To stop sleepwalking through existence and wake up to the fact that we are living inside a mystery, surrounded by miracles, sustained by grace. Fourth, accept responsibility. The Hopi understand themselves as caretakers, not owners. Their relationship to the land is not one of possession but of stewardship. They don't ask what they can take from the earth. They ask what the earth needs from them. What ceremonies must be performed? What balance must be maintained? What discipline must be practiced to ensure that the fourth world continues? This is radically different from the modern relationship to land, which is based on ownership, control, exploitation. We ask what can be extracted, what profit can be generated, what development can be imposed. We see land as commodity, resource, investment opportunity. And this relationship is why the earth is dying. The Hopi message is clear. Humans do not own the earth. We belong to the earth. We are not masters but members. We are not consumers but participants. And with participation comes responsibility. The responsibility to maintain balance, to perform ceremony, to live in a way that ensures the continuation of life. This means making different choices. Consuming less, wasting less, taking only what's needed, giving back more than we take. It means prioritizing long-term sustainability over short-term gain. It means protecting wild places, honoring animal relatives, respecting plant nations. It means understanding that we have inherited a world from our ancestors and that we have an obligation to pass it on to our descendants in viable condition. The Hopi have lived this responsibility for over 1,000 years. They've maintained their covenant with the land even as empires rose and fell around them, even as forces tried to destroy them, even as the modern world offered them the false freedom of abandoning responsibility for the temporary comfort of consumption. They refused. They held on. They kept the ceremonies alive, the prophecies intact, the memory burning. And now they're asking us, will you take responsibility? Will you accept that your choices matter? Will you understand that the way you live creates the world your children and grandchildren will inherit? Will you be willing to sacrifice comfort, convenience, and consumption for the sake of continuation? Fifth, organize around natural cycles. The Hopi spiritual calendar is synchronized with the sun, the stars, the seasons, the agricultural cycle. They don't impose arbitrary human schedules onto natural processes. They align human activity with natural rhythm. Planting when the earth is ready, harvesting when the crops are mature, resting when the land rests, celebrating when abundance arrives. Modern life has completely severed this connection. We work year-round regardless of season. We eat food out of season shipped from thousands of miles away. We light up the night with artificial illumination, disrupting circadian rhythms and sleep cycles. We schedule our lives according to economic demands rather than natural rhythms. And this disconnection has profound consequences. Physical health problems, mental health crises, the pervasive sense of being out of sync with reality. The Hopi are showing us a different way. A way of living that recognizes we are not separate from natural cycles but embedded in them. That our bodies are regulated by circadian rhythms that respond to light and dark. That our emotions are influenced by seasons, by weather, by the phases of the moon. That our spiritual lives require alignment with cosmic patterns, with solstices and equinoxes, with the movements of planets and stars. This doesn't mean rejecting all technology or returning to some romanticized primitive state. It means being selective, intentional, discerning about which technologies support alignment with natural cycles and which disrupt it. It means prioritizing rhythms of rest and activity, work and renewal, engagement and retreat. It means understanding that constant productivity, endless growth, perpetual motion is not human nature, but industrial programming. And that deprogramming, returning to natural rhythms, is essential for health, sanity, survival. Sixth, protect the children and think 7 generations ahead. The Hopi plant corn not just for themselves, but for their children, their grandchildren, their great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren. Every decision is evaluated not by immediate benefit, but by long-term consequence. Will this choice 7 generations from now produce blessing or curse? Will it create abundance or scarcity? Will it maintain the possibility of Hopi life or undermine it? This 7-generation thinking is completely absent from modern decision-making. We elect leaders who prioritize quarterly profits over long-term sustainability. We make policy decisions based on election cycles rather than generational consequences. We consume resources as if there's no tomorrow, literally creating a future where there might not be a tomorrow for our descendants. The Hopi are begging us to stop this insanity, to recognize that we are not isolated individuals pursuing personal gratification, but links in a chain that stretches backward to our ancestors and forward to our descendants. That we have inherited a sacred trust, and that we will be judged by how well we maintained it. Think about the children. Not just our own biological children, but all children, all young people, all future generations. What world are we creating for them? What climate are we leaving them? What species diversity? What water quality? What soil fertility? What social cohesion? What mental health? What possibility for meaning, beauty, connection, joy? Right now, we are failing them catastrophically. We are handing them a degraded planet, a destabilized climate, a sixth mass extinction, a mountain of debt, and a set of problems that our generation created, but is leaving them to solve. This is not just unfair, it's immoral. It's a betrayal of the most fundamental human responsibility to ensure that our children have at least as good a chance at flourishing as we did. The Hopi way demands better. It demands that we make sacrifices now so that future generations can thrive. It demands that we restore what we've damaged, replenish what we've depleted, heal what we've broken, not for reward, not for recognition, but because it's the right thing to do. Because we are ancestors in the making, and the quality of ancestor we become is determined by the choices we make right now. Seventh and finally, recognize that prophecy is not prediction, it's warning. The Hopi prophecies about the end of the Fourth World are not inevitable. They are not predetermined. They are warnings. They describe what will happen if humanity continues down the current path. But they also describe an alternative, the path of balance, of remembering, of return to sacred relationship. The prophecies say that at the choice point, some will choose to continue the upward path of technology, separation, exploitation. This path leads to destruction, to the cleansing purification that ends the Fourth World. But others will choose the lower path, the path of reconnection with the earth, of balance, of spiritual alignment. This path, while difficult, leads to continuation, to transformation, to the possibility of a fifth world. And here's the crucial teaching. The world doesn't have to choose collectively. Each individual chooses. Each community chooses. Each culture chooses. And those who choose balance, who remember, who maintain sacred relationship, they will survive the transition. They will be the seeds of what comes next. This is not escapism. It's not about abandoning the world and building fortresses in the wilderness. It's about living differently right where you are, making different choices, cultivating different relationships, maintaining different values, being different kinds of humans, humans who remember. The Hopi have been doing this work for over 1,000 years. They know how to survive transitions. They know how to maintain culture through catastrophe. They know how to emerge from world endings into new worlds. And they're offering to share this knowledge, not as dogma, but as template, as inspiration, as proof that another way is possible. But time is short. The window is closing. The signs are all present. The choice must be made. And the Hopi are clear. They've done their part. They've kept the ceremonies alive. They've maintained the prophecies. They've tried to warn the world. Now it's up to us, each of us, individually and collectively. Will we remember or forget? Will we choose balance or continue toward catastrophe? Will we honor the sacred or continue treating the world as disposable? The future of the Fourth World hangs on these choices. Not choices made by governments or corporations or leaders, though those matter, but choices made by millions of individuals, deciding every day how to live, what to value, what to honor, what to protect. The Hopi message is simple. You have been warned, you have been taught, you have been shown the way. Now choose, and choose quickly, because the Fourth World is ending. The only question is whether humanity ends with it or emerges into something new, something better, Something that has finally, after 4 attempts, learned how to live in balance with the sacred earth that births and sustains us all. This is the message. This is the warning. This is the gift. And now, having received it, having heard it, having understood it, we stand at our own personal crossroads. What will we do with this knowledge? How will we choose? What kind of ancestors will we become? We've traveled far together. Through emergence myths that explain the cycles of human consciousness. Through prophecies that describe our current crisis with unnerving accuracy. Through ceremonies that maintain the web connecting human and sacred. Through messages that demand transformation of our deepest assumptions about reality. And now we arrive here, at the end of the story. Except it's not the end, is it? Because the story continues. The fourth world continues, at least for now. And what happens next depends entirely on the choices made in this moment, in this breath, in this precise point where awareness meets action. The Hopi have given us everything they can: knowledge, warning, example, template. They've maintained a culture of balance for 1,000 years in impossible conditions, proving that it can be done. They've preserved prophecies that speak directly to our moment, proving that they saw us coming. They've offered to share their message with the world, proving that their concern extends beyond their own survival, to the survival of all humanity, all life. But they can't choose for us. They can't force us to remember. They can only point, teach, warn, and hope. So here we are, standing at the prophecy rock, looking at the 2 paths. One path rising upward, separated from the earth, technological, confident, leading directly to fragmentation and catastrophe. The other path remaining connected to the land, to the sacred, to the cycles, continuing forward through difficulty but sustainable, viable, alive. Which path will we choose? Not humanity as an abstract collective. You, right now, in your life, with your choices, through your actions. Which path are you on? And if you're on the upward path, are you willing to descend? To return to the earth? To remember what you've forgotten? This is not rhetorical. This is practical. This is the question that determines everything. Because the world we create is the sum of millions of individual choices. What you eat, how you consume, what you value, how you relate to nature, whether you maintain sacred practices, whether you take responsibility for consequences. 7 generations forward, these choices seem small, personal, insignificant against the scale of global crisis. But the Hopi know something we've forgotten: that the small is the large, that the personal is the planetary, that the way you plant a single seed, speak a single prayer, make a single choice, reverberates through the entire web of existence. You are not powerless. You are not irrelevant. You are a thread in the web. And how you vibrate affects every other thread, every other being, every other possibility. This is not magical thinking. This is systems understanding. This is indigenous ecology. This is the truth that quantum physics is beginning to describe in mathematical language, but that indigenous peoples have known through direct experience for thousands of years. The fourth world needs you. Not to save it through heroic individual action, but to participate in its continuation through daily practice, through remembering, through alignment with what the Hopi have been protecting. It needs you to slow down, to pay attention, to treat life as sacred. It needs you to learn the names of plants and animals in your region, to understand the watershed you live in, to know where your food comes from and what sacrifices made it possible. It needs you to create ceremony in your life, whatever form that takes, whatever tradition speaks to you. It needs you to think 7 generations ahead, to protect children, to make choices based on long-term consequence rather than short-term gratification. And it needs you to spread this message, not by preaching or converting, but by living differently, by being an example of another way, by showing through your life that balance is possible, that connection is real, that the sacred still exists and still responds to those who approach it with humility and respect. The Hopi are still on their mesas. The ceremonies are still being performed. The Kachinas are still dancing. The corn is still being planted with prayer. The prophecies are still being remembered. They're holding up their end of the contract. They're maintaining the connection. They're doing their part to ensure the fourth world continues. Now it's our turn. All of us who have heard this message, all of us who understand that we're at the crossroads, all of us who recognize that business as usual leads to catastrophe. We have to choose. We have to change. We have to remember. And if enough of us do, if the critical mass is reached, if the collective consciousness shifts, then maybe, just maybe, the fourth world doesn't have to end in catastrophe. Maybe it transforms. Maybe it evolves. Maybe it becomes something new. Not a fifth world in the sense of the previous cycle, but a transformed fourth world. A world where humanity finally integrates the lessons, finally achieves balance, finally remembers how to live as sacred beings on a sacred earth. This is possible. It's difficult, but possible. The Hopi prove it's possible. Their 1,000-year survival proves it's possible. Their continued practice proves it's possible. Their willingness to share their message proves they believe we can do it too. So let's honor their gift. Let's receive their teaching. Let's heed their warning. Not someday. Not when it's more convenient. Not after we've solved all the other problems. Now. Today. In this moment. Choose the lower path. Return to the earth. Remember the sacred. Accept responsibility. Align with natural cycles. Think 7 generations ahead. And become the ancestor your descendants will thank you for being. The fourth world is waiting. The choice is yours. The time is now. May we choose wisely. May we remember deeply. May we live in balance. May the fourth world continue. And may we finally, after 4 attempts, learn how to be human in a way that honors the sacred gift of existence on this beautiful, suffering, resilient, miraculous earth. This is the message of the Hopi. This is the teaching of the guardians. This is the prophecy, the warning, and the path forward. Now go. Live it. Become it. Be the change the fourth world needs. And in 7 generations, when your descendants speak your name, may they do so with gratitude for the choice you made in this critical moment. The choice to remember. The choice to return. The choice to honor the sacred and ensure that life continues. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for considering. And most of all, thank you for choosing. Because your choice matters. Your life matters. Your remembering matters. May we all walk in balance. May we all honor the sacred. May we all become worthy ancestors. Until next time, remember who you are, where you came from, and why you're here. The Hopi have not forgotten. Let's make sure we don't either.